All right, so as I was saying, so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is going to be video day. So Wednesday and Thursday I'll show the same video. It's the Republicans and the Democrats 1960 to 1992. And it's an excellent video. You know how we're always talking about, can we find unbiased like reporting and news and that sort of thing? This is extremely well done as far as, I mean, one guy's a Democrat, one guy's a Republican, kind of. And they're just very fair to the kind of discussing the two parties. And so you're going like from Kennedy with the Democrats, Lyndon Johnson, okay, Jimmy Carter, and kind of this is where Bill Clinton is running for election while they're making this video. And he's what's called a new Democrat, okay? And he was. Bill Clinton is different than any really Democrat we've had in a long time. And then with the Republicans, you start with the 1960 election, Nixon versus Kennedy. Okay, Nixon loses. Okay, then the Republicans try this conservative Barry Goldwater. Okay, and it's kind of the beginning of the conservative movement. The real, not the beginning, but at a presidential level, the conservative movement. And of course, that won't happen until 1980 with Ronald Reagan. Okay, so you'll get Nixon, Reagan, and then you'll get Bush, and he's running for re-election when the video's made. So it's really good because if you've started to pay attention to the two-party system and the two parties in particular, and their ideologies, their platforms, and so forth, it's funny how history repeats itself. Okay, and this is very good history that will make you, if you watch this, a much more enlightened person when it comes to the history of these parties in the modern era. Okay, and so for that reason I take the time to show them, not just to fill space, but we're talking about political parties, so let's learn something really good about it. Okay, that being said, we'll jump back into the notes. We were talking about how we're kind of entrenched in this two-party system, and I said I was going to have 4 different reasons why, and I'd given you the first 2, which were just kind of the same thing, but the history that we started with 2, and we kind of stayed with that, the inertia of that, the force of tradition, that maybe if it's not broke, don't fix it, although some people would say it's broke, the two-party system is horrible and everything else, but okay, and so forth. So I want to give you the third reason why, and this is kind of detailed, and that is the electoral system itself. Okay, the electoral system itself. And this will help us better understand how the Electoral College works as well. All right, so if we come over here to the map, come with me. Okay. As I mentioned previously when I talked about the Electoral College, 48 of the 50 states, it's winner take all. Okay, so if you had a third party, and say they got 20% of the vote, they would get some Electoral College votes if it wasn't winner take all. But you've got to win 51% to get any Electoral College votes, unless you're in Nebraska or in Maine, correct? Which is set up by districts. But there again, the districts are winner take all. So each district's 1 Electoral College vote. There's 4 districts. There's 5 here in Nebraska. Okay, so it's really hard for third parties to even get any Electoral College votes because you have to win 51% of the vote. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's one part of it. Okay, the other day I mentioned this. To get on the ballot, in most states, you've got to get 50,000 signatures to get on the ballot. And I think I told you guys the other day it was 1%. It's actually 2%. If you get 2% of the popular vote in, say, the state of Kansas, then automatically you can nominate a candidate for your party the next 4 years down the line. Okay? But if you don't get 2%, you start over and you got to get 50,000 signatures. All right, so let me give you an example. Ross Perot, and this is a name, any of you guys ever heard this name? Okay, he was a Texas billionaire that ran for president in 1992. Okay, this was George Herbert Walker Bush, Bush 41 the elder, okay, versus Bill Clinton, okay, the governor of Arkansas, and Ross Perot, billionaire businessman, who is running under the banner of the Reform Party. Okay, Ross Perot's Reform Party, he got 19% of the popular vote nationally. 19%, almost 20%. You know how many electoral college votes he won? Zero. Okay? If that doesn't tell you something about how this is one of the major reasons why we're stuck in the two-party system. Now, what Ross Perot did by getting nearly 20% of the popular vote is that every state that he was in, in 1996, they could run a candidate. The Reform Party could run a candidate in every state because he got more than 2% in every state. Ross Perot did. Okay, he's kind of an interesting character. Kind of got this funny accent, and he would go on CNN like every week. Larry King, I don't know if you ever heard that name before. Larry King used to have this show on CNN, and Ross Perot would go on there and he'd say, "Now, Larry, this is the problem. You got both of these parties, and they're messed up, and we're going to get them straight, Larry. And I brought this chart." And he always bring these charts, and Larry loved him, and the people loved him. I mean, because what was he saying? He's saying these two parties are messed up. Is he right? Yeah, of course he is, right? So people were drawn to that, okay? But not enough to, to win an election or even an electoral vote, okay? The other thing is with this is that most people believe, and so the Reform Party, okay, so we're talking about the Reform Party, or the Libertarian Party, or the Green Party, okay, these are, parties that have had presidential candidates in recent years in many states, that it's a wasted vote. People won't vote for a third party because they don't think they can win, so they think it's a wasted vote. How do you guys feel about that? Do you think if you really, say you're strongly this very much environmentalist person, and you think that neither party is doing a good job in dealing with the environment, do you think you should vote for the Green Party candidate? Is that a wasted vote? Carly's saying, yes, that's a wasted vote. Jake, what do you think? Is that a wasted vote?
I don't know, it's a tough question. I mean, the stigma is every vote counts, right?
Sure.
But it totally doesn't.
But it does. It does.
The country's on it doesn't matter. It's a lot of people on board.
That's good for business.
Otherwise, it won't go through. It's just you and 10 of your closest friends.
But to be fair, that mentality, it doesn't really
I
care.
feel like that's what causes the problem.
If there's not enough, if there's too many people that think it's a wasted vote, so they don't do it, then you have no chance.
Right.
So you just gotta go for it, man. Right?
If it's just a few people who think it's a wasted vote, then it totally is, right?
It could be. Well, let me give you an example, because we're going to talk about it. This is a minor party, a third party. Okay, so let's go back to the year 2000. Ralph Nader. For some reason, it didn't sound right. Okay, Ralph Nader was the presidential candidate for the Green Party in 2000. All right, he's been an environmentalist going back decades. Okay, written books about the impact of products that harm consumers, vehicles, and cars, and Unsafe at Any Speed, I think was the book he wrote. And he's a big environmentalist. And so he ran for president in 2000. This is Bush v. Gore. This is W. Bush versus Gore, okay? In Florida, Ralph Nader got 3% of the vote. That election came down to Florida. Now, do you think more people that tended to be Democrats voted for Ralph Nader than tended to be Republicans that voted for Ralph Nader? What do you think? More Democrats voted for Ralph Nader than Republicans? Yeah, that's a pretty good chance. If none of those, or half of those 3% that voted for Ralph Nader would have voted for Al Gore would have been president of the United States. So if you're a Republican, no, that's not a wasted vote. That was a great vote voting for Ralph Nader. Okay? Because it gave Bush the election. All right? Now, when Ross Perot did it in 92, okay, Clinton won the presidency with 43% of the popular vote. Because what's his name? Perot got 19%. So, did Perot take more from the Republicans or the Democrats? Probably the Republicans, although some historians dispute that. I tend to think that I would have been more likely to vote for Perot than a Democrat, personally. But anyhow, I did not vote for Ross Perot because I thought it was a wasted vote. And I thought he was kind of a fraud, but anyhow. And I liked Bush. I mean, anyhow. Yeah, so these can have an impact. And so that is a reason why they have a hard time getting in. And that's another reason why we're stuck in this two-party system. Okay. But people have to make that decision on their own. I think I talked about this before. My next door neighbors were very strong, Christian folks, and they just couldn't vote for Trump. They're Republicans, they're conservative, but they just couldn't vote for Trump out of conscience. And I get that, They didn't vote for Hillary either, but out of conscience too there, So yeah, you gotta. There was no. This guy McMillan. I think he was on the ballot. He's this guy out of Utah that was on. I don't know if he's Mormon or not, but he's from Utah. Yeah. I think he was on the ballot in like 20 states or something like that, maybe 25 states. He didn't get on the ballot in all 50. So. Yeah. Okay. So the last reason, which is very easy, okay, is this 270. Okay, it's 51% to win the presidency. Okay, you've got to get a majority of electors. Okay, versus in a multi-party system like a parliamentary system where you don't need a majority, you need a what? You don't need a majority, you need a what? Come on. Emma, we just talked about this.
Super majority.
Where's my other history student? Who is that? Oh, you guys are killing me.
You just need the most.
Yeah, the most, which is what?
Popular
vote.
No.
Highest percentage. That's what I was saying.
Nice job, Wayne. Thanks for remembering. Thought I could count on you. Okay. All right, so there's 4 reasons, right, why we're stuck in the two-party system. So, guys, when you hear people complain about the two-party system, all right, understand that it's very difficult to change it. Okay, with the electoral system that we use, it's nearly impossible. Now, can it be done? Yes. Okay, but it's going to be very hard. I personally think that Donald Trump has saved the Republican Party. Okay, because the Republican Party was in such bad shape. You know, the Democrats, you know, they stick together really well. Even though, I mean, Democratic Party's not doing great either. I mean, understand, they don't control the House or the Senate or the White House, okay? So they're not doing very well, okay? But the Republicans could give up the House, could give up the Senate in 2018. Well, we're going to have to see, yeah.
What would it take to change it and get a third party in there? Would the other two candidates just have to be really weak?
You need a really strong personality. You know, so you need somebody that...
If Trump was like not a Republican?
Like an independent.
Yeah.
Right. You would need somebody that's but better than Ross Perot.
Yeah.
You know, and it might take what's called a splinter party, where one of these major figures from one of the two parties that's very popular splits with the party and takes a lot of people with them, and then draws from the other party.
Has there ever been anyone better than Ross Perot?
Yes. George Wallace,
Okay.
1968. Huh? The segregationist,
Okay.
which we'll talk about. The American Independent Party. He won quite a few electoral votes, all from the Deep South. Yeah. Yeah.
This could be a stupid question, but would a president be able to, once they're elected in office, change?
Switch. Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
They could?
Yeah, they can switch parties. Parties aren't, remember, they're not in the Constitution. They're just a vessel that we use to fill the seats in government.
So what would happen to them? Would they just not get reelected, or is there?
Well, it depends whether they switch to. I mean, if say Trump became a Democrat, okay. I mean, I don't know what would happen. To be honest, I still believe this. I mean, we're not a year and a half in yet, but I still believe that conservatives are going to be more upset with Trump than liberals when it's all said and done. But we'll see. So far, he's been fairly conservative. So like just the reaction to the Florida shooting. Okay, President Trump is not beholden really to the party, the Republican Party, but he came out, had this listening session, and so he was like saying, "Let's pass some laws," you know, and then people started talking to him and saying, "Hey, this doesn't make sense," or "This isn't what we stand for," and so he walks some of that back. Okay.
Did you see a video of him talking to, I don't know, some other people? He was like advocating for like a change in the age, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's kind of walking that back, but I don't know.
What was the thing that his notes said during the listening session? Was it like "I hear ya" or something like that? You guys see that?
He had like a note in
Yeah, he
front
had
of him.
like a notepad and he had the notes on his hand, and at one point he like flipped them towards the camera, and at the bottom of it said something like "I hear ya" or "I feel ya," just to like remind him to say like "I hear ya" to these
Yeah.
shooting victims. It was so weird. It was the most bizarre thing. You
Yeah.
guys really not see that?
No, I saw it.
Hold on, I'm gonna look it up.
Well, I mean,
I don't know. I believe you. I just want to remember what it said.
oh, okay. All right, we're going to change directions for not really too far. We're not going far from this, okay? We're going to look at minor parties. And this is really kind of interesting, guys. Studying minor parties. There's four.
Was there not four?
What was
Got
it?
three.
Okay. All right. The Electoral College. The fact that you've got to win 51% in the state to get any Electoral College votes, that's a reason. You can go with, you got to get 2% to be back on the ballot the next time. There's another one. You can show that you have to have a majority, not a plurality. That's another one. You can divide those up, put them together however you want. And then you could say, for another one, you could say because people think it's a wasted vote to vote for a third party. Okay, so if I asked you for 2, do you think you can come up with 2? And I gave you like 6, but I only said there were 4.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. All right, moving on to minor parties. New header, minor parties. And then this is going to be 4 types of minor parties. 4 types. How many?
4.
4 types of minor parties. And we're going to start with ideological. Let me spell that for you. Or as George Herbert Walker Bush would say, ideological. All right. IDEO. IDEO. Logical. IDEO. Logical. Okay? Dash. All right? What does ideological party mean? It means it's based on a particular set of beliefs. An ideology, an ideology. Okay? Did Adolf Hitler have a particular set of beliefs? Did he have an ideology?
Yes.
Yes. What about Karl Marx?
Yes.
I think Marxism would be an ideological party, so the communists would be an ideological party. Yes? What about the libertarians? Do they have an ideology?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that's an ideological party, libertarian. Socialists, do you think they have an ideology?
Yes.
Yes. However warped it may be, it is an ideology. Oh, silence. All right, I'm speaking. Oh, what is this generation? Y? What? Y? Z? What are you?
I don't
We're millennials.
No, we're Z.
know.
You are not millennials.
We're Z. We're Z. We're Z.
I was looking at you.
Wait, are we actually not millennials?
No.
Why?
What year were you born?
2000.
You're going to be better than the millennials.
You're hitting me.
People that came of age, people that came of age at the millennium. So people that were in their teens and 20s when they,
Okay, then what are we now?
Z.
So it goes millennials then Z.
I'm X.
So what is it just after millennials and Z?
I think so. Yeah. I think there might have been a Y in there.
No, yeah, so. Yeah, millennials are Gen X.
Okay. Okay.
But we just call millennials because they have to.
Yeah.
It's changing. It's going to change.
Yeah. Not with that.
Get out of the parents' basement, people. All right. Ideological. So I gave you some examples, yes? Libertarian, socialist, communist, Marxist. Okay. Now, just think about this real quick. Ideological parties rarely win. Ideological parties rarely win, but they are long-lived. They don't tend to go away. The second type of minor party is a single-issue party. As the name implies, like the pot party, okay, it's a single-issue party. Like the vegetarian party.
That's not fair. It's so funny. Yeah, would the Green Party be considered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Single issue.
Advocate for, just not
Based on what belief?
Historically, here's a couple others. Like Free Soil. I don't know if you remember hearing about that. The Know Nothing Party. The Green Party. Okay. Now, would you venture to say that one of the two major parties has adopted the Green Party's issue?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I would say the Democratic Party's tried to annex that issue, if you will. although the Green Party still exists, but the Democrats certainly have moved in that direction. So usually these single issue parties fade away once one of the two major parties adopt that issue. Okay? I'm really kind of surprised at this point. Neither of the two major parties have adopted the pot issue. Obviously, the Libertarian Party kind of has, but they're not a major party. So it'll be interesting if one of them does. And I'm not here to say that it's going to be the Democrats. I mean, there's a lot of Republicans that have very libertarian strains in them. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. Now, the states that have gone with pot tend to be more blue states, more Democratic states. Okay. Hope everybody's okay. The third type of minor party is the economic protest party. Student teacher.
So where would the Libertarian Party fall? The economic?
They're ideological.
Economic protest.
Economic protest. Did I say that? Economic protest? Bless you. Okay, so, I mean, kind of as the name says, this is rooted in economic discontent. Rooted in economic discontent, okay? So there's not really a clear cut or wide range of belief. They just want better times. They want better situations. Okay. So I mean, I got a couple examples for you. One would be like the any guys remember this Occupy Wall Street movement just a couple of years ago? What about the Tea Party? The Tea Party from a few years ago? These people were upset. I mean, the Tea Party was upset about big government spending. They were upset about the national debt. They were upset about the Affordable Care Act. Okay, the Occupy Wall Street was, against the one percenters, and all the wealth in the 1%. Historically, you might remember something called Greenback Party or the populist parties of around the turn of the century, the populists. These usually just fade away when the economy improves. When things get better for everybody, these kind of go away. Okay. The fourth is what's called a splinter party. Are we 35 today? 40. Okay.
So what would economic protest parties even do?
Protest. Throw a fit. Mad. No. I mentioned the Tea Party, which tended to be pretty conservative. What? Go, Wayne.
Okay, I know this isn't really pertinent to what we were talking about, but the national debt, I heard that like only the largest country that we owe is like China, and that's only like 2-point-something trillion.
Yeah,
and
that's
then the
about
other one is
correct.
Japan, which is like 1.7 trillion.
And then
so
Saudi
where's
Arabia.
The rest of our 18 trillion going.
Okay,
towards
this
those?
isn't really the time to do that, but it's owed to ourselves.
So like the American people.
Yes.
Okay.
And the American government. We owe it to ourselves. We sell treasury notes. Okay. The government buys treasury notes from itself, and then people buy them, and countries buy them. Okay. So it's like bonds, basically. So if Grandma ever buy any of you guys a U.S. savings bond? Okay. Well, it's a good investment. And it's what China is doing, Saudi Arabia. They're putting their money in the United States because the United States has the strongest economy in the world, and there's no real reason to think that's going to change. So they buy these treasury notes, and that gives us money. Okay, we buy them from ourselves as well, to the tune of $20 trillion. So most of is owed to ourselves. Now, you can't just throw that away because it would destroy the world economy, I think. But so we have to pay it back. Yeah. What? Yeah, you can't do that.
I no longer owe any money.
Yeah, it would be a banana republic. Seriously, you can't. Yeah, okay, come on. I got to finish this. Okay, thanks for messing me up there. No, I mean, it's a good question. It's just, that's something we should have talked about in history. Did you not ask it in history?
Maybe I did.
Okay. All right, Splinter Party, we get that?
Yeah.
All right. When an individual leads a break from one of the two major parties. Okay, and we've seen this on a couple occasions. And the one I was talking about earlier was Wallace's American Independent Party. Okay, Wallace was the guy that stood in the schoolhouse door in Forrest Gump at Tumursa, Alabama. Remember that? Yes. That's Henry Wallace. Guy. So right here, 1968. Did I say Henry? George Wallace. I'm sorry. George Wallace. There was a Henry Wallace as well. Okay. When I was, and there's a Lurleen Wallace, which was George's wife. Because when I was playing college baseball down in North Florida, we used to come up in Alabama all the time and play these little junior colleges. And have George Wallace, Henry Wallace, Lurleen Wallace, junior colleges. Okay. Yeah. Excuse me. I played at Chipola Junior College. Chipola. Named after the Chipola Indians. And we were the Chipola. Hi. Yeah, you better. Okay. All right. So he got 46 electoral college votes in 1968. Okay. And there was another guy named, I don't remember this name, La Follette. He was a progressive. He broke with the Democrats and did pretty well. And then Teddy Roosevelt and the Bull Moose Party. Okay, these are some pretty successful splinter parties where a person that is very much liked leaves the party. Usually these people can sometimes win congressional or local elections, but it's hard for them to win presidential. Okay. And briefly, real quick, okay, I've got 3 roles of minor parties, and we've already kind of talked about them. All right. So when I talked about the Green Party, okay. So number 1, roles of minor parties. Okay, and this is a good test question. Spoiler. They can play spoiler in an election. And this is exactly what happened with Ralph Nader and the Green Party and Al Gore. Okay, they don't win, but they can cause somebody to lose. Playing the spoiler. Okay, so people point to Ross Perot in '92, Ralph Nader in 2000. Number 2, innovator or reformer. Innovator or reformer. So, as the Green Party really highlights the need for environmental consciousness, the Democratic Party takes up their mantle and they have reformed the system, or they have innovated the system. Does that make sense? So when a major party adopts their platform, they've achieved their goal. Which is, I mean, I think that gives some credit to our two-party system where we say, it stinks, we can't get out of it. But there are people that can change the system. There are people that can reform it by being passionate about it and organizing in grassroots efforts, okay? And the third role of minor party is it helps stop disenfranchisement. Okay, disenfranchisement. Stops D-I-S-E-N, franchisement. F-R-A-N-C-H-I-S-E-M-E-N-T. I mean, you guys can spell franchise, can't you? CHISEMENT. Disenfranchisement. Okay. All right. So, you're 18 years old, you're 20 years old, and you're like, I don't like either one of these parties. So, I'm not going to get involved because they're all the same. Which in many ways, they are. Okay? So if a third party comes in, like a libertarian or a green, okay, it gets people involved in politics that normally wouldn't. Does that make sense? Now, just to point out an example here. Ron Paul, 2008. Okay, Ron Paul ran for president several times. He is a libertarian at heart, but he ran for president as a Republican. In the 2008 caucus in Wichita, I went down to the Republican caucus down at Century 2. 16 was much larger. 2008, there's still quite a few people down there. But the Ron Paul people were out in droves. That's where I got this bumper sticker. Okay, and these people didn't look like Republicans. Okay, some of them had long hair. Some of them had tattoos. Some of them had piercings in weird places. Okay, but they were at the Republican caucus. Okay, so what Ron Paul, through his libertarian leanings, was doing was giving franchise to people that normally wouldn't get involved in politics. Okay, and for me as a Republican, that seemed pretty cool to see all these kind of weird fringe people out there. As Republicans, I was like, look at these guys. Hey, can I get one of those bumper stickers? Okay. I really like Ron Paul. I mean, he's a surgeon. He's OBGYN. He's a really good. He was in Texas politics for 40 years or something like that. Now his son is a senator from Kentucky. Okay, and he's ran for president a couple of times. Again, like his dad, has strong libertarian leanings.
How old is Ron Paul now?
Ron is probably over 80.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like Bernie Sanders had all these like young people following. Ron Paul was the same way. All these young people showing up for this old man because they liked his beliefs. Same thing with Bernie. Hey, I don't. People can believe what they want. It's. Yeah, he's a socialist, a democratic socialist, which doesn't mean anything different. Okay, hey, thanks, guys. We'll continue tomorrow. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.